Hello and welcome to Frost Over the World. Later in the programme, the new singing sensation Emily Sandé. And another, but very different sensation, hits the US race for the White House as Mitt Romney loses 3 electoral contests, not the most important ones, but 3 contests in a day. But we begin with the imminent elections in France. Campaign season has not officially started yet, but there are already at least a dozen hopefuls hoping to win the race to the Élysée presidential palace. One of them is with me right now. A dashing figure, Dominique de Villepin. He's a long-standing critic of Nicolas Sarkozy, but would he, for instance, really run the risk of splitting the centre-right? What does he see the situation, his situation, right now? What would you say, how would you describe, how would you characterise the relationship between yourself and President Sarkozy at this moment in time?
Well, hello, David. They are very Republican relationship. They are courteous, but of course we have a long story together, so we have known ups and downs during all these years.
If the election were to end up being between Mr. Hollande and Mr. Sarkozy, how would you be inclined to vote?
Well, I think it's too early. The political fight has not begun, so we should not presuppose of any kind of result. But no, we will see how the campaign is going to evolve. We are just at the beginning of the campaign. And of course, I have a strong intention in telling the truth to the French people, because I believe this battle is about telling the truth, what kind of effort the French must do during the coming next 5 years. And I don't believe that the truth has been told to the French people already.
So they've got an over-favourable impression from the current regime in that sense? Is that the truth that they've not been told, is that there's more bad news?
Well, I'm afraid the last 5 years have not been good working political years. And I believe that France has not done what it should. We should have reduced political spending during all these years, and we have not cut into the budget. We should have raised the taxes in order to have the French debts going down. Now it's almost 90% of the GNP, which is far too much. We are losing around 1 point of growth with such a debt. So I think we should do the job, and the job has not been done during these last 5 years. And the French, when they voted for Nicolas Sarkozy, they were expecting that things were going to happen, and unfortunately nothing happened, and we see today the result, which is not at the level of the expectations.
And that's particularly true economically, you're saying?
Well, I think it's many factors, but I think there is some kind of a political incapacity here to take decisions. You cannot take difficult decisions when you have 40 ministers around the table of the Council of Ministers. That's why I'm proposing only 10 big ministers who are going to be able to redistribute the work of the state. We should redefine the work of the state. The state in France is doing far too much. Is doing almost everything, which is not the good way in a modern state. Also, I do believe we have 22 regions in France. I believe we should have only 8 big regions which should be able to fight with the lenders, the Italian provinces or Spanish provinces, to project France's capacity in Europe and in the world. So I think we need a strong political reform, and of course we need also to reform on the economics and the social sector.
In the case of Marine Le Pen, the predictions are in the recent polls that she could actually poll double as much as her father, 29% rather than 15% in the polls. Do you think she's that much of a danger?
Well, I believe the story is not written yet. We don't even know if Marine Le Pen is going to be able to enter in the competition, because she must have 500 signatures of mayors or political high-ranked people in order to be part in the competition. And I believe today she doesn't have these 500 signatures. So we don't know how all this is going to evolve.
Do you think that the president has the ability to make a comeback with his rather depressing poll figures at the moment? Or do you discount?
Well, I believe things are never written in politics. I think today he has lost the election, today. But of course, there is the magics of election. There is the capacity to communicate and to find the right speech. He has not been able during these 5 years to do so. But he has talents, and he might be able to find the right words and the right proposals. The question is, how much will he be able to deliver if he is elected? How much is the socialist candidate will be able to deliver if he is elected? I think the key question in France is the one of credibility. How much the French politicians today are telling the truth to the French, and how much the French are going to be disappointed after the election. That's why I think we should tell the reality to the French today and tell them it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard. You are going to have to work more. You are going to have to pay more taxes. You are going to have to cut in public spendings. These are difficult things to do, but we need to tell the truth to the French.
And at the moment, there's a situation, one of the polls puts you at the moment, as you said earlier, these are very early days, but one poll that says you're at the moment at 1%, but then a few months ago you were at 9% and so on. Do you have a clear target of what you would regard as success?
Well, a success will be to win, because that's the only kind of success which is interesting in politics. But I think the key thing is to be able to tell the French what I think should be done in the next 5 years. France has a problem today in terms of competitivity. It has a problem in cutting public spending. It had a problem of independence. I don't accept that France is aligned and following German policy. I do believe that France has to find an equal position with Germany if we want to have a strong and balanced Europe. We don't have this anymore. And it is a problem because we are following the Germans as far as the economic policy is concerned, and this is not the best for the Europeans.
Looking now at the situation and the European project, was that, as it turns out, in the form it took, too demanding, too overly ambitious?
Well, I think we have not found during the last years the right way to defend the global interest of Europe. Of course, we need to be very strict in terms of respecting the objectives of reduction of deficit. And the Germans are right when they say we need more discipline, more budgetary discipline. We need more discipline. But we need also more solidarity. And I think we should have found a way to end the Greek crisis if we had more solidarity within Europe. And I think we should be responsible in mutualizing all the debts in Europe, and this will clearly give a future to Europe and get away all the uncertainties that we are facing today. And there is a third element which is completely forgotten in Europe today, which is growth. We should have big projects in order to have more growth in Europe. We see the situation is getting worse everywhere. We see a difficult social situation in each of our countries. So we need to take steps in order to relaunch the growth in Europe. More investment, more projects.
And do you see Angela Merkel having an influence on this election?
Well, we have the feeling today that Angela Merkel wants to campaign with Nicolas Sarkozy. And I believe it's a very bad idea, at least for Nicolas Sarkozy, because he's not going to gain points with such a help. And I believe we should respect the sovereignty of our countries, and the French people, they don't like anybody from the outside to get involved with these elections. So I believe that it would be for Sarkozy much better if he would do campaign alone. But of course, the policy between France and Germany is going to have a strong influence. We have not been, and Nicolas Sarkozy have not been able to convince Angela Merkel to have a more balanced policy in Europe. So it is going to be one of the challenges of the next weeks and months. And I believe that a certain number of candidates are going to defend the idea that we need to take a more stronger stand with the Germans in telling them that we, of course, are ready to accept more discipline, but they should give us and give to Europe more solidarity, more financial solidarity, and also more growth.
And do you think, in terms of the immediate future, that if Greece was to leave the euro, that would, as some people say, strengthen the euro, or would it weaken it?
No, I think it would be a very bad news, because when you fail once, you can fail twice, and you can fail a third time. It will be very bad news for all the country of the south of Europe, because it will show that we are not able to find the right solutions. If we had taken the right decisions toward Greece 1 or 2 years ago, well, the bill would have been a lot cheaper than what it is today. So I believe we have an obligation to find the right solution, and France, Germany, all the Europeans, we need to help the Greek out of such a situation, and we must take the right stand.
And in terms of foreign policy, Dominique, France was a key player in the situation in Libya. Does it annoy you that we cannot find any way of making a real contribution, the rest of the world, the rest of Europe, in the current situation in Syria?
Of course, I think there is a very cruel situation in Syria. We have really an obligation toward the Syrians and toward the region to do something. I understand that it is difficult to redo what has been done in Libya. It's very difficult to imagine any kind of military intervention right now in Syria due to the complexity of the region and the very big fragility of Syria. But yes, we can do something in terms of humanitarian intervention. And I'm very much in favor of some of the projects that once the Arab League and Turkey had been putting forward. For example, the humanitarian corridors, or a protection zone for the civilians inside Syria. I think we should go forward with such projects, and of course try to influence day after day both Russia and China, that we all do have a responsibility, and they have a special responsibility concerning the massacres that we see every day, massacres of civilians, massacres of children, which are absolutely unacceptable.
So do you feel, compared with the period of time when you were Foreign Minister and then Prime Minister, do you feel that the world situation today is more worrying than then, or has improved a bit?
No, I think the situation is quite worrisome. We see the situation, for example, in the Middle East, with a very difficult situation in Iran. We see the situation of the peace process, which has not gone forward in any way during the last years. And what's puzzled me the most is that we had a great occasion with Barack Obama after George W. Bush, Barack Obama taking the power in the US. We missed this occasion, both the Obama administration and the European countries. We missed the possibility of finding new ways to solve the conflicts, finding new solutions to the world, getting a better governance for the world. We have not been at the level of these challenges, and I do believe that the fact that the European leadership has been very weak during this period is, in a way, an explanation. It's not an excuse, but it's an explanation. We need stronger leadership in the world if we want to go forward. We cannot let the problems without finding solutions. We need more courage, more determination, and most of all, we need more imagination. The world doesn't have enough imagination. When you look to the European leadership, the Commission, the European Council, Mrs. Ashton, these people, they don't know enough the world, they don't want enough to find the good solution, and they don't have the courage to find the solution. It is the same today in the United States or everywhere around the world. More courage, more imagination. I think that's what we need.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being with us, Dominique, and bringing to the fore that word we don't hear enough about, imagination. That certainly is a very key factor in what happens next. Thank you so much for being with us, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And now from the French race to the United States race. The Republican Party presidential primaries are turning into something of a white-knuckle ride. Rick Santorum shocked everyone on Tuesday with his sweep of Colorado, Minnesota and Missouri, leaving commentators asking whether it's the beginning of the end for Newt Gingrich's claim to the not Mitt Romney candidacy. With Arizona, Michigan and Maine still to fight for, and then Super Tuesday on March the 6th, the same day as Arsenal play Milan, as we know, the real winner of this internecine war may well be, yes, you've guessed it, Barack Obama. Avowed Republican and radio pundit, an expert. Charlie Wolf's here, aren't you, Charlie? Yes, you are, absolutely, definitely. And playwright and author Bonnie Greer is here too, and they're both going to give us the benefits of their thoughts. First of all, let me ask you, Charlie, do you think you've got a new star emerging this week, Rick Santorum?
I think it's more, as you said in your introduction, he's becoming the non-Rom candidate. So it's affecting Newt Gingrich more than it will Mitt. I think Colorado, of the three, was the surprise. And I think that was a learning, that was a teachable moment, I think, as Mr. Obama calls it.
Yes,
for Mr. Romney, in that he has to give his all on every state. He didn't put much into these smaller states. Missouri, I wasn't surprised about. Minnesota is a very sort of libertarian. Jesse Ventura, the former wrestler, the libertarian, was the governor there for some time. But Colorado did surprise me. But again, Mitt Romney will learn from his mistakes, but this will hurt Newt Gingrich more. But I don't think it brings Mr. Santorum any closer because, well, first off, delegate-wise, he's still in third place. I think he's 4 delegates behind Newt Gingrich. It was not a massive delegate haul. He's not going to be able to have the money or the organization to play in the big states where it really counts.
But this is the problem. I agree with Charlie. This is the problem. The Republican Party is going through the kind of internecine warfare that the Democratic Party went through about 30 years ago. The Republican Party is becoming the home of the deeply socially conservative grassroots. So they found a home there. They don't really like Romney. He's really the only electable person who's running now. They don't really like him. They're looking around for somebody to reflect what they think is their social conservatism. And so Santorum looks like the person. What is beginning to happen now, of course, is that the more that they drive the Republican Party in that direction toward that right, the less likely they're going to get the independents who are going to be the people who are going to decide this election. Romney looks good now, but if the Republican Party can't settle itself around what it's going to do and what it's going to be about, it's not going to get a president in the White House this cycle. I don't think they're going to do it anyway, because actually Obama's moving more toward this direction. But they're in a deep situation. That's very deep. And Santorum is good for democracy, but not good for what's going on within the Republican Party. A Republican like Charlie right now, as far as the grassroots are concerned, wouldn't be an electable proposition at this moment in time. And that's what the Republican Party has to settle down, to be honest.
Is Mitt Romney today, as we sit here, still definitely, absolutely definitely the front runner?
I think so. Well, he is in terms of delegates.
Yeah.
And even Karl Rove had an interesting piece in the Wall Street Journal yesterday. As you know, Newt's strategy is he's going to take Texas and suddenly everything will be rosy. He's going to have some sort of major haul. And I'm not half the expert that Karl Rove is when it comes to doing the math and figuring out the stats. He said, but wait a minute, you know, a lot of these states are still proportional, and, you know, Newt's planning as if he's running in a vacuum here, like he's the only one. He just said mathematically it's not possible. And I think, again, it goes down to this cycle is ideology versus electability, and electability has to win up because independents are looking at Mr. Obama, and a lot of Republicans are looking at Mr. Obama, and they're scared of what he's going to do in the next 4 years. It'll be a spending spree galore. And I think they're coming down to what was William F. Buckley Jr.'s rule of the most electable conservative. So if candidate A is 90% conservative, but he's not going to get you elected, better to have candidate B who's 80% conservative.
But the problem is that the Republican Party itself don't like their front runner. They're not happy with this front runner, primarily because the media is so dominating this election. All of these guys have gone through something like 2,000 debates. I don't even know how they're still standing. And one of Newt's sort of fuel is that if he can get another debate, if he can get out there, he can sort of somehow take this nomination away, but he's not electable, and that's the real issue, really.
But I think the debates were more of a moment. It worked in South Carolina, but you notice he was off his game in Florida, and you can only Newt was, and you can only use the strategy of lashing out at the press so many times. It worked very well when there were the accusations by his former wife, and John King of CNN opened the debate with that, and that was his golden moment. But you can't keep doing that every time there's a debate.
But the base doesn't like the front runner. I mean, that's the issue.
But the thing is...
they'll come around.
Yeah,
they'll gather around at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But the energy that's being spent on trying to find somebody they like is really what's going to be the mess.
But that's the bizarre thing. Here we have, not exactly mathematically, but sort of half the electable people of the United States are on the Republican side. So let's say it's half and half.
Yeah.
It varies a bit, obviously. And yet, with these millions of people, they haven't found a really walk-in candidate who can turn things around for them.
Well, it's a strange year. Generally, when there's a sitting president, they have a major advantage. So that's why Sarah Palin didn't get in, because she thought, do I really need the heartache from Obama, because he's going to run a smear campaign. He's going to run a major.
She didn't do it.
And she's easily tarred.
Yeah.
Obama's not going to run on his record. There's very little record to run on. Mitch Daniels, Chris Christie, these guys are sitting there making calculations, saying, is it better to wait it out? If Obama gets back in 4 years, it's in a clean field, they stand a better chance. So that's why the field has been somewhat limited. But it is also a year when people are saying, if ever there was a chance since George H.W. Bush of having a one-term president, if you look at the job numbers, you look at the popularity polls, you look at the economic numbers, it says that Mr. Obama has a very good chance of being a one-term president.
But in terms of the Democrats, I mean, that is looking very positive at the moment.
The Democrats, as Charlie said, don't have to do very much. They got an incumbent, and it's very difficult to defeat an incumbent. But I think what Charlie isn't painting the picture of is the turmoil the Republican Party is in. And people are, independents, the ones, the floating voters who are going to decide this, are looking at the Republican Party, trying to see what are they? Who are they? They're not going to vote for someone like Santorum, because Santorum is to the right of their own thinking. Romney is possible, but they need to see what the Republican Party is. Nobody knows what it is yet. Even Romney doesn't know what it is yet, and that's why I think they're going to miss this cycle, to be honest with you, and Obama will have a second term.
It's no surprise to find you both in great form. Thank you both very much indeed. Emily Sandé, soul-singing newest star. She'll be with us after this incredibly short break.